Hello, this is Music Appreciate, and today we're going to take a look at Acts chapter 5, verse 12. And I'm going to go through 16, so a short passage here, which my Bible titles Many Signs and Wonders Done. Verse 12 and following. Now many signs and wonders were regularly done among the people by the hands of the apostles, and they were all together in Solomon's portico. None of the rest dared join them, but the people held them in high esteem. And more than ever, believers were added to the Lord, multitudes of both men and women, so that they even carried out the sick into the streets and laid them in cots and mats, that as Peter came by, at least his shadow might fall on some of them. The people also gathered from the towns around Jerusalem, bringing the sick and those afflicted with unclean spirits, and they were all healed. All right, small passage, but I think there's a lot of import in it, especially when you consider its position in between the story of Ananias and Sapphira's death and then the arrest of the apostles, which comes afterwards, and their subsequent release by an angel of the Lord. So, all right, and many signs and wonders were regularly done. I thought that was an interesting way to put it, because wasn't just one or two. There was enough done to draw people, and then draw people every day. However, it wasn't a flippant affiliation. And they were done by the hands of the apostles. Okay, it doesn't say anybody else did anything. It says the representatives of Jesus, the apostles, were doing it. It doesn't mean others couldn't do it, but it puts the emphasis on the heralds, the people who are entrusted, the men who are entrusted with this new life, proclaiming it. And they were all together in Solomon's portico, or Solomon's porch, and another translation has Solomon's colonnade. Whatever it is, we know it overlooks the Kidron Valley, the place where Jesus was near the time of his arrest. And but I think it should be noted that none of the rest dared join them, but the people held them in high esteem. Respect and fear, and the good kind of fear. In other words, the death of Ananias and Sapphira and the corresponding preaching that took place meant that these people were serious about the Lord Jesus. These apostles were his designated and commissioned and spirit-empowered representatives of this new life. And fear kept some of them away, whereas, but on the outside they go, hey, they got something pretty good over there. But they didn't dare join them, because if they were half-hearted, they might die too. If they think they could approach the God of Israel flippantly, they would die too, like Ananias and Sapphira. But verse 14, and more than ever, believers were added to the Lord. You see, the flippant didn't come in, but the true did. Multitudes of both men and women. This is not a men's movement. This isn't a women's conference. This is everybody getting saved, so that he even carried the sick out in the streets and laid them on cots and mats. A cot is elevated above ground. A mat is on the ground. So when Peter came by, they had enough faith to believe that even the shadow of Peter would fall on some of them, and they would be healed. And these go beyond just the confirming signs that say, listen to the message. Sure, the disciples did preach the message, and the message of the new life. But this was healing by compassion too. That the power of the Lord. They were added to the Lord. And then in the Lord's power is this healing. And the healing leads to walking and leaping and praising God, as it did back in chapter 3. So this is it's miraculous, it's beautiful. And the people also gathered from towns around Jerusalem, bringing the sick and those afflicted with unclean spirits, and they were all healed. It reads like a gospel passage, something in Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, because it's the same situation. The apostles have authority from Christ to preach the gospel. They also have miracle power to exercise compassionate healing miracles as heralds of the new covenant. And then people from the surrounding towns gathered. So it's the same thing as it was in, like, you can read many accounts. There's many towns around Jerusalem, and the gospel is moving out a little bit. So we see here the main adversary, though, in the next chapter, the next part of this book is going to be the Sadducees. It seems like they take more of a prominent position as persecutors of the new faith than the Pharisees. However, they're still both in operation. And fear, respect, but additions to the kingdom and glorious works. This is the current state of the church in this book. Thank you for listening.